different, oh, and really, really gay.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's your host, Donovan. It's, what is today? Monday, January 19th at 11 p.m., 11:09 p.m. Tonight, I'm doing an off-limits show about MLK. Did MLK's dream include the gays? And also, since it is an MLK today, Martin Luther King Day, if you didn't know. So I wanted to talk about that on the show. Also, going to talk about some things in the news in regards to gay rights lately. Also, American Horror Story, gay dolls, and a few other little things. So, if you have not ever heard the show before, you can go to offlimitshow.com. You can go to Spreaker.com. Spreaker, that's Spreaker, Spreaker.com. Also Twitter, also Facebook, and also you can listen to the show on iTunes. If you want to subscribe there, feel free. Of course, offlimitshow.com, you can hear the show there live as well as on Spreaker. So feel free to also chat there as well. So today is Martin Luther King Day. And, you know, when I was a kid, celebrating this day, or whatever you want to call it, you know, if you want to call it celebrating, I don't know. People get the day off, basically, since it's a national holiday now. But when I was a kid, you know, it was viewed as something of a, you know, we're off on that day. It was never like, we're celebrating Martin Luther King Day, like we're gonna, you know, really go all out and just sort of have a picnic or or whatever, like you do Memorial Day or 4th of July or something. And I've always wondered why that is, because the spirit of what the day is meant for, in my opinion, is not just to celebrate the person himself, I guess, and what he accomplished, but specifically it's about celebrating, in my opinion, you know, diversity and the fact that we can all coexist together in harmony and happiness and whatever. And most of all, most importantly, civil rights. And civil rights are, of course, something that everybody has a different take on, depending on what you are, whether you're gay or a woman or black or Hispanic or Asian or whatever you may be, that makes it something, or transgender, that you may want to have your rights, you know, equated to the rights of others. It is a different thing. I think it means something different for everyone, the day, Martin Luther King Day. And so what I was saying is, when I was a kid, I didn't really think of it much of as of a holiday, because it just kind of was a day we kind of, you know, got off school or whatever. And I think it's a shame, because you know, if you listen to my show, especially in the earlier years of my show, I was a very voracious defender, and still am, of course, but my shows were far more and more about this in the first 3-4 years of it, about, you know, civil rights, human rights, the rights of people, the disenfranchised, etc. And I still, of course, feel that way and carry those things a great deal in my show. And so it's important to me. And so the holiday, therefore, is important to me. So when I think about the legacy of Martin Luther King, I think about what he, you know, stood for, the idealism, the idealized version of Martin Luther King. Every person we look up to or idolize historically is human, and therefore they have drawbacks about their personality or flaws, whatever you want to call them, things that may not be so well received by the majority of the public or by a judging puritanical public. And so Martin Luther King is no different, you know, when it comes to presidents, when it comes to heads of state, when it comes to celebrities, people that we revere as sports figures in one way or the other. You know, there's drug use, there's infidelity, there's all sorts of things negative on the dark side of their personality that we don't really we kind of look past because we look for the best in who they are. And I was just talking about Whitney Houston a couple of nights ago, and she's a great example of it. She was an incredible singer, had an incomparable voice, and she was undeniably talented, but she also had horrible demons to deal with. And so MLK was no different. He actually had his own issues to deal with as well, and apparently he was a big philanderer like JFK was. And was not this are all, I don't know the truth. I mean, this is just what I've read about him. And just was not, perfect. So who is? But one of the things I wanted to look at about him was, what did Martin Luther King Jr. think about gay people? And the only thing we know for sure about him is that in 1958, for Ebony magazine, a kid wrote a letter, an anonymous letter, and it said, "I am a boy, but I feel about boys the way I ought to feel about girls. I don't want my parents to know about me. What can I do?" And the question was directed to MLK. And in response, this was his response. He said, "The type of feeling that you have toward boys is probably not an innate tendency, but something that has been culturally acquired. You are already on the right road toward a solution, since you honestly recognize the problem and you have a desire to solve it." So I look at the answer this man gave to this gay kid, and it was specific, especially for the time period in which it was in, what I would expect of him, of a black man, of a black preacher, and a black preacher in 1958. Okay, it's what I would expect of that kind of a person. But it's not something I would have expected from him in terms of civil rights. It doesn't really say anything about his views on civil rights for gay people. You can infer from that what you want. You can say, well, since he didn't believe homosexuality was right, which he said essentially in that response, he must not also feel that gays have the right to have equality. But I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think that it doesn't necessarily make, they're not mutually exclusive. Just because someone doesn't believe being gay is right doesn't mean that they necessarily think that gays should not have equality in every way. I think you can have that thought in your head that, on the one hand, I don't agree with them more morally or religious reasons, whatever the reasons are. But on the other hand, I also believe in civil rights for humans. And so, to really the only thing you can do is kind of guess at what he may have thought. And I don't know, because I didn't know him, obviously, wasn't alive. But I do know that if you take what he has said about civil rights for black people and for, just the general civil rights movement, and you apply those same things to the gay movement, which is very similar in some ways, of course, it makes logical sense that he would have thought and agreed that gays should have the same rights if he were alive today. If he were alive today and had, gone through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and 2010s, and actually had grown and evolved on his thoughts about gay people in terms of it being wrong or right morally. Even if he hadn't, I still think he himself would have been okay with gay people having equality. And so you look at the things, he said, one of the things, of course, was, he looks forward to I have a dream, looks for a day when people judge someone by the content of the character and not the color of their skin. It's the same for gay people in terms of judging gay people for our accomplishments and our contributions to society, and not for whom we fall in love with, who we fall in love with or who we sleep with, or because we dress a certain way or look a certain way or whatever. Things that have no bearing on the character of the person, but things that are just completely irrelevant to what is important. And so it is my feeling that Martin Luther King Day, although touted as a black holiday, is not just about black people. It's about civil rights for everybody. It's about equality for everyone. And so that everyone has the same starting point, the same opportunities to achieve the same things in life, whether it be financially or buying a house or getting married or having children or being treated the same way, equally under the law in general. So, for the thing about it is, though, if it comes to most black men, the black culture itself is incredibly, incredibly homophobic. And it is a certain dichotomy to me in my mind, because you have these people whom have been oppressed for hundreds of years in this country, and yet they somehow refuse to see any parallels. Some of them, not all of them, obviously. But I'm saying as a whole, as a generalization, their culture refuses to accept the fact that the gay movement and the civil rights movement in the 60s are quite similar. And ultimately, we are fighting for the same things. So I think that's the important thing to realize and to recognize, regardless of one's views on homosexuality or on Christianity or whatever it may be. And I don't know if I'm just unique, but I've always been able to carry more than one thought in my head at the same time, and I think it's a mark of an intelligent thinker to be able to do that, because I think you have to be able to see two sides of something to understand it at all. You can't just see everything from one perspective. You have to see it from both and try to understand both sides of it, the argument of the perspective. And in order to do that, you have to really try to understand where people are coming from. And so, being gay has nothing to do with should have nothing to do with one's access to equality or equal rights under the law. Being black, being Hispanic, being Asian, being a woman, being a transgendered individual, none of these things are important to equality under the law. As a matter of fact, none of it is important to equality under the law. It doesn't matter who you are. We should all have the same rights, regardless of where we come from, what we look like, what our socioeconomic background might be, what our race is, our creed, our religion, whatever. We should all have the same starting point. And that's what this country is supposed to be about and supposed to be like. It isn't like that, and hasn't been like that for a very, very long time, if ever. And I don't think it will be that way ever, probably either. I think it's an ideal. And ideals are good. Ideals are things that we strive for, strive to achieve, strive to accomplish. And that ideal, it may or may not ever actually happen. But if we strive for it, if we keep trying to meet that level of equality in this country, then we won't fall very short from it. We'll at least get somewhere near that. And until that happens, I don't find that Martin Luther King's dream will ever be realized, not just for black people, but for all oppressed people in this country. And there are so many in this country that are still oppressed, including black people, all the people I've already mentioned today, all the racial minorities. And of course, there are religious minorities and religious sects that are persecuted, as well as gays and lesbians and transgender people. And, the list goes on. So it isn't like the America that they paint a picture of in our minds as children is real. It isn't real. And as I said, it's never really existed. Instead, it is an ideal. And I think a country should have as I said earlier, an ideal to strive for. That's fine. But to pretend as if we have accomplished so much when so much has left to be done in this country, and not just with civil rights, but in many ways, I think is disingenuous, and I think is unfortunately a lie. So that's what I had to say about that. Before I go, I wanted to talk quickly about American Horror Story. I've been watching this show since the very first season, and I love it, and I think it's incredible. And this season has not been my favorite, and a lot of people agree with me about American Horror